For those of you who are interested in reading a horrifying book that may trouble you for a long time, there was this radio show. I think it's canceled now. I remember listening to it. It used to come on around midnight. Hello. And the host had this guy on the show. He was a dentist, or he is a dentist. Maybe he's dead now, I don't know. And he had just finished his book, The Emerging Viruses, maybe 20, 25 years ago. For those of you who have Audible, you should download the book. I think it's free now.
The Emerging Viruses?
Yeah, it's by Horowitz.
What do you think about Alan Watts?
You're stupid. No, let me finish this and then we'll go to Alan Watts. How viruses are created and then experimented on people. How the Congress funds all this, and how HIV came about, how cancer came about. It's about 500 pages. I mean, I know most of us feel kind of powerless in life as it is. New information makes you even feel more powerless, especially if you happen to be a person of color, because we are the ones that are usually experimented on. So, yes. Alan Watts. You know, Matthew, I think everyone out there, everyone in this class as well, we have some interesting ideas about this and that. Nothing wrong with any of those. I think the problem comes about when you try to apply those ideas in real life. And Alan Watts was married like 4, 5, 6 times. His kids never liked him. They kind of categorize him as a deadbeat father. And the truth is, you know, if you have a good amount of confusion inside you and you want to get rid of that confusion, you have to spend a lot of time on yourself, figuring out your emotions, figuring out your past, the way you think about things, always observing the way you think, the way you talk. I mean, every aspect of your physical and mental and emotional expressions. The truth is, if you happen to be like Narcia, that particular kind of selfishness, you don't really have much time for, you know, relationships with things on the outside. I think it wasn't T.S. Eliot, or maybe it was T.S. Eliot, who had mentioned that self-love and self-romance, once you're engaging in those two things, you don't really have much time for things outside of you. And that's one of the difficulties of Alan Watts. You know, that you have these people, lots of time on their hand. They have the luxury of being creative, of being talented, of being introverted. And they sit somewhere and they begin to kind of, you know, play with ideas. And then they go on the stage and they give the rest of us life lessons. And it usually doesn't work. I think it's just difficult being honest. There is this moment of honesty in Hermann Hesse's book, Siddhartha, where Siddhartha meets the Buddha, or runs into the Buddha. Hello. And the Buddha is about to give him this like pep talk about the meaning of life, soul, spirit, all that. And Siddhartha stops him and says, I'm not really interested in those ideas. I had a student some time ago who sent me an email. It was her father had just passed, and she said to me, if there is any book that talks about grief in a relatively nice way, and I said no. I mean, I could have probably just referred it to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, but the truth is, I don't know how well anyone can put a living experience in words. I mean, that's what Siddhartha asks the Buddha. I'm not interested in your ideas about life. You sat somewhere and all of a sudden something happened to you. I want to know that, not all the other things. And the Buddha just walks away because, I mean, it's like asking someone, tell me what it means to be black, what it means to be brown. The hell? Just shut your mouth. Hi. So, Alan Watts, as ideas go, great. As a guy who introduced Eastern philosophy to Western folks, great. Are they applicable to Western psyche? I think as bumper stickers, they're great. As things to kind of talk about over dinner, wonderful. Things to excite your date about, yeah. Can you apply it to your life? No, it doesn't work. Unless you kind of just want to completely walk away from your culture, live in a cave somewhere, or go to Nepal. But, del do I know. Hi. So, Oliver, right? So what do you guys want to talk about today? Let's do something like fun. Jessica.
Yeah, what's up?
What?
What's up?
What's up? I don't know.
When you said something fun, the first thing that came to mind was Schrodinger's cat.
The what?
When you said something fun, the first thing that came to mind was Schrodinger's cat. That's not really
What's cat?
Schrodinger's cat?
What is that?
Poison.
Yeah.
I don't care about that, yeah. But thank you, that was very nice.
Kind of like the same type of thing, like does a tree make a sound if it falls in the woods and everything?
That was actually on the list of certain questions.
Right.
That was on there.
Sebastian, anything? Sophia? Oliver? Nathan? Yeah.
I don't know if it's fun, but what determines success versus failure?
Hermann Hesse? Who?
What determines success versus
Oh,
failure?
success versus failure. How old are you?
41.
Can I just be blunt and honest? You sure? I mean, it's just part of who and what we are. It's just the way we function as the sort of animals that we are. The truth is, you just go through life. You react to certain ways your parents are. You react to certain ways your friends are. You react to certain ways society is. They either encourage you to go left or they encourage you to go right. And you don't really have much of a choice in any of that. They just the battle of passions. Does your mom have more sway over you than your father? Is it friend A over friend B? Hello, Isabel. And, it depends on your temperament, on the sort of passions that live inside you, and they will eventually guide you to either go left or to go right. And you either go left because it's an avoidance of pain, or you go right because it's the pursuit of pleasure. It's a very basic way of defining the sort of rotten creatures that we are. And things occupy a good amount of space inside you. Mental space, emotional space, psychological space. Hello, Oscar. And your body is a good vehicle to kind of express your passions ultimately. Time passes. And you have your mini Buddha moments of awakening, moments of clarity, where you're able to kind of look back and examine. And it doesn't happen because of training. It just psychologically something happens to us. It's kind of like all of a sudden you regret having done something, Not while you're doing it, but time needs to pass. You need to either get caught by someone on the outside, or you need to get caught by your own conscience. And you think back and you say, man, that was really stupid of me. And it takes you a while to kind of embrace your failures, because you've made a lot of mistakes. That's what we do as human beings, And no one is exempt from that. And then you have your bouts of depression, sadness, anger, where you say, how could I have been so stupid? How could I have done this, or how could I have done that? And that particular state can kind of move into two directions. You either beat yourself up in such a punishing way that you won't recover. You'll get sad, you'll get chronically depressed, and you remain forever angry. That's like failure on top of failure on top of failure. Or you're at the right time, right place, both inwardly and outwardly. You're able to kind of observe some of the mistakes you've made. You take notes. And then you try to correct the way you think about it. And then you try to correct the way you feel about it. And then you try to correct the way that your future thoughts and emotions and body moves when it comes to that particular stuff. Like you say, man, I was married to the wrong guy for 20 years. I'm never going to make that mistake again. So you begin to have different ways of looking at relationships, at yourself, the sort of life you want to have for the next 50, 60 years. And I suppose if you're able to learn, the idea that human beings are born in sin, it's absolutely true. I mean, it's the most, I think, important Christian lesson for Christian and non-Christians alike. We are kind of born and created insufficient, incomplete. And it's through the mistakes, but only mistakes that you can learn from, that all of a sudden a failure can be categorized or morph into this thing we call success. In the absence of that, it just remains a failure. And it's tough. It's tough embracing failures because it just makes you feel like crap. Your self-confidence goes away, your self-image goes away. And we are by our very nature, we are wired to be arrogant. One of the 7 deadly sins, pride. It's just the moment you're born, it comes with you. And it's difficult to admit to yourself that you're a piece of shit. It really, really is. And oftentimes it just happens before you just take your last breath. You kind of have a review of your life and you say, man, I stink as a human being. I should have done something different. I think the people we talk about in this class and other people in social science classes, people like Karl Marx or Mahatma Gandhi or Jesus Christ or Gilgamesh, these are people who were able to kind of correct some of their ways before they actually died. Like they had 10 years to kind of fix all the mistakes they made, And so we kind of look at them as our human heroes and we try to emulate them, embody some of the teachings that they gave us. But I think it's something we talked about plenty of times in this class, which is initially, those ideas inspire you, kind of like Alan Watts. They really do inspire you, Like you're driving down the road and there's a bumper sticker in a car, just act of compassion for a minute. That makes you think, and you're inspired. And then you kind of begin to think about how often you've been a Scrooge in your life. And that generates a different set of emotions, you know. You become angry, remorseful a little bit, and then the next stage is, okay, now that you have seen, now that you know, let's put all that stuff into action. Which means that you have to combat, go against the Scrooge that you've always been. Give a 20 to a homeless person. So, and I think if you want to look at this whole picture, big picture, there is no success to be had. I think all of us try our best, and all of us leave with a good amount of regret. Can I tell you a story? Sure. The story comes from Rumi, and I think I may have told the story to class, I don't know. I am so bored. So,
Do you want to tell the story? It's like he's not so bored.
Assalamu alaikum. There was a show on TV canceled now, Boston Legal, with Alan Shore or James Spader and William Shatner. Really, really good show. And just before that, season 8, The Practice, which again featured James Spader and William Shatner. I'm not quite sure which season or which episode this was, but James Spader and William Shatner find themselves before the Supreme Court. You know, it's because the old man, the lawyer, William Shatner, is suffering from Alzheimer's. And there is this drug that just came out. It's, you know, in its initial stages of being tested on specific people. And so Alan Shore, this young judge, goes before these 9 Supreme Court justices and says to them, let this guy have it. And they say, no, we can't do that. Eventually, of course, this junior lawyer, Alan Shore, wins the argument. But what he says, which was very compelling, is, you know, this old man is my best friend, and his brain is turning into mush. And if I had the power to go inside his head or inside his body and yank this disease out and trash it so it could kind of just be who has always been. You know, you remember who you are, you remember what you are, you have a past, you have a future. And one of the things that Alzheimer's does, which my father is slowly beginning to suffer from it, is you begin to forget. You begin to forget all the stories that make you you. I mean, you forget that you're black, you forget the black history, you forget the genocide against the black folks, both here and abroad. And all this knowledge and all this history that you have create emotions inside you, and those emotions give you purpose, give you ambitions. You know what you're angry about and why you're angry, and you seek justice and fairness and equality and all that. And this disease comes in, and little by little you forget all of that, and you just become, you know, a hollowed corpse, really. And sometimes when I say I'm bored, I kind of walk to class and I have no idea what to do with these ideas, how to convey them, how to express them, how to make them kind of come to life, how to make them stick. And it seems like a futile attempt, which is really an awful way of doing business with the students, especially those who are 18, 19, 20, come to class with a good amount of hopes and dreams. And they're very ambitious, hopeful about their future. And here you are, you know, looking at this guy who's almost dead, talking all this gibberish. But all that wonderful inspirational stories aside, let me go back to the Rumi story. Um, it's about this bird who's flying around, beautiful parakeet, you know. And this man, in a very cunning way, captures this beautiful bird that's flying around in this net, takes it home, puts it in a cage. The bird still flies around, but the cage is far too small. You know, bangs his head to this and to that. And after a while, the bird just doesn't fly anymore. The wings are just useless, just sits on the porch, as if you will. But sings. And the songs are not happy songs. باز بانگی از نیستان میرسد غم به داد غم پرستان میرسد. That these are like sad lamenting songs, and all that the bird wants to do is just have someone hear, you know, his laments, but there's no one out there. So after a while the bird becomes mute, doesn't say anything. So you have a bird, initially excited, inspired, flies around full of life, gets captured, put in a cage, very, very small, no longer has any use for his wings, has all these songs about how it felt to be free and how it feels to be held in bondage. And after a while, doesn't sing either, just sits there. His owner one day goes to him and says, you know, I'm going to India, or I'm going to Yemen. Is there anything you want for me to bring back for you from these places? And that's one of the things that, you know, it's in our culture, that any of our friends or relatives who goes abroad, the first thing they do is call us and say, so, you know, I'm going back to Iran or Cambodia or wherever. Is there anything you want from back home? I say, yeah, you know, can you bring me this book, or can you bring me that instrument? So we make all these modest requests. Can you bring me some saffron, some spices from the whole country? And so this owner goes to the bird and says, is there anything I should bring for you? He says, well, you know, when you go to India, there's this place called Dehradun. It's a city. For those of you who've never been to India, you should go. It's a nice city. Not really. And when you go to the city, go to this particular location, and you'll see this gigantic tree, and look up, and on the branches, you'll see sitting all these birds that look like me. Tell them that in Oakland, there's a bird, you know, who used to fly around freely and sing this beautiful songs, exciting songs. But you caught this bird in a net, brought it home, locked it in a cage. After a while, the bird couldn't fly. Then the joyous songs turned into sorrowful songs. And then after a while, the bird became mute. And the owner looks at this bird and says, well, that's a very strange request. Why should I say those things? He says, well, you asked if I want anything, and this is what I want. So the man goes to India. Before coming back home, he goes to Dehradun, you know, goes to this tree, looks up, there are all these birds, and looks up and says to them. And then the birds tell him, what are you doing here? This is sacred grounds, you know. And the man says, well, you know, in Oakland, I have this bird. And used to fly, but no longer does. Used to sing, but no longer does. And when he's done with the story, one of the birds from one of the branches falls to the ground and dies. And the man is very sad. That was the cause of this bird's death. Comes back to Oakland, and the first thing that happens, the bird asks him, well, did you tell them my story? And the man says, yes. What happened? Well, when I finished, the bird fell and died. When he's done telling his own bird the story, his own bird falls to the bottom of cage and dies. The owner is now really, really sad. You know, unlocks the gate or the door of the cage, takes the bird out, puts it on the ground, opens the window to go bury it, and the moment the bird leaves his hand, flies away. And it's, what happens to children? What happens to all of us? Your kid is born and flies around, breaks things, jumps on the walls, crayons the entire house. Of course, as parents, you want some structure, you want power, you want control. You're just tired of life. You try to tame your kid, but they resist being tamed. I mean, talk to any first grade teacher, first through 25th, and they'll tell you it's really difficult to have the kids focus on anything. And eventually, society just beats them down. Little by little, you realize the kids no longer run around, no longer scream. They just sit there. These days, they just play with their phones. They have nothing exciting to share. They're like a corpse. They have wings, but they can't fly. They have feet, but there is nowhere to go to. They have all these songs to sing, but the joy has turned into sorrow, frustration, irritation, anger, loneliness, depression. Basically just loss, So, any other questions? Isabel. Elham. Let's have a question from the Middle East.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this, but do therapists have therapists?
Yeah. Therapists, not all of them, but most of them. First of all, you need to ask yourself, why would anyone want to go in that profession? Why would why would someone want to be a therapist? Of course, initially it's because you have this really infantile, beautiful, intention that you're there to help people. And sometimes it works. I'm not saying it doesn't. And I'm not saying that, it's always short-lived. Some people really have the power to transform you. First, imagine you're my daughter. In your age, my age, it's kind of appropriate, let's just say. And let's say I see you being sad all the time. And I want to rid you of sadness, but I can't. But you're my daughter, I love you. And so I try to look for ways to kind of get rid of some of the poison that lives inside you. Well, first, as your father, I have a lot of emotions inside me. And I also have added emotions because I know I can't fix you. I can't reach you. And even if I was able to reach you, you're not really receiving me too well. You're not very hospitable. And so you realize that as a father, I am in isolation. My wife and I, your mother and me, can only just gossip about what's happening to you. At a certain point, I say, you know what, maybe I should do some research. So I go to library and I comb through books, or I download audiobooks on Audible, and you realize I'm spending a good amount of time by myself trying to figure out how to deal with a daughter that I love who is suffering from depression. I mean, that's a lot of loneliness on my part. It's a lot of loneliness on your part. So the first thing you need to understand, I'm not doing research because I enjoy, the emotion called depression, or a set of emotions contained in depression. I do this because I want to fix you and I can't. So I spend a lot of time with books, and I spend a lot of time with emotions I can't deal with, and I spend a lot of time thinking about those emotions and how to kind of overcome them, fix them, understand them, and eventually express them in a way that someone can receive. And because of our relationship, you're far too close to me. You're my daughter. And I think the idea in the New Testament or in the Gospel is very, very accurate, that no prophet is ever welcome in his own town, that parents can't really be a good teacher to their kids because they're too close. Maybe my brother, your uncle, will tell you the same thing that I have just told you, but you receive it from him because your relationship is very, very different. And so at a certain point, I say to myself, well, you know, I can't reach my daughter, but I'm sure there are lots of daughters out there, lots of parents out there, hello, who have daughters very much like mine, you know, that they try to overcome certain emotions, but they couldn't. So maybe I could go in there and help them. So, number one, a therapist spend a lot of time by themselves. They have lots of ideas in their heads. And they try to bring down what's above, what's in their head they want to bring down and apply them. I think therapists use their patients to make themselves feel better. And there is nothing wrong with that. I mean, we are transactional animals, you know. And if, let's just say I am your therapist, if by seeing you, I can make myself feel better, but at the same time, you also benefit from it, well, it's mutual transaction. Nothing wrong with that. The other thing that you need to kind of, I mean, go back to people like B.F. Skinner or Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung, Abraham Maslow, all these psychologists / therapists, they live a very solitary life. I mean, one of the things that Freud's wife said about him was that he treats ideas like the way people treat pornography. I mean, pornography is very exciting. I don't know if you've ever looked at magazines. That's what we had back home, that we had to kind of steal from and go to some wasteland somewhere and look through the pages. These days, it's just, you know, laptops and lap dances and those things. But imagine someone like Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung just sitting somewhere and going within and going into mental institutes and trying to figure out, you know, what is it about people that makes them go a little nutty? And then it's like you have cancer, you walk home and you're just thinking about how to fix people. And it's a very solitary life. And one of the things that human beings are like, you know, these boiler tanks. We're like buckets of water placed on a stove. And the water gets warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer. At a certain point, ideas become so intense about you, they generate a good amount of emotions that they bubble all over you. And at a certain point, you need to express them. You know, someone like Mike Tyson, because of his profession, he kind of punches the bag. Someone like Sigmund Freud tries to find people to talk to, you know. So are therapists alone? Yeah. Are people in general alone when they begin to think and feel? Yeah, one of the things that people who have just lost someone, the problem with grief, for example, grief is always about loss. You know, if you were to come to class on Tuesday and someone else was here, and you ask her, where is Amir? And this person would say, well, Amir, sorry, you know, we got this news that Amir had a stroke and died. Well, the truth is, Alam and the rest of you, we don't really have much of a relationship. You'll be sad, maybe a little bit, but after a day or two, it'll go away. You know, will you have lost something? Sure. Is it going to impact you? No, not really. If on the other hand, you were my wife, or you were my daughter, or you're my lover, or whatever, we had a, you know, 10, 15, 20-year relationship, that's a lot of history between you and I. And so when we talk about grief, you're talking about loss. And when you talk about loss, you're talking about a certain part of you that lives inside another human being. And so when that person is no longer there, an image of yourself can no longer be experienced. My father is right now 92. You know, every time that my mom calls, in the back of my head, I'm saying, my dad died, right? Now, I washed cars with him for about 40 years. You know, I've been around this guy for about 60 years. So that's a lot of history, and we have a great relationship. He's like a saint to me. And so when he dies and I go to my parents' home, I'm always going to look at the head of the table. He's no longer there. you know. So loss is always going to come with a great amount of grief, i.e. sadness. And initially, you're going to find yourself in a good amount of denial. No, that can't happen. No, that's not true. So a therapist, going back to your original question, they have lost something. What they've lost, I don't really know. All of us are losers in the sense that we've lost something. So, Tyler, anything? Oliver, how about now? If you can, Oliver. I mean, therapists are great, don't get me wrong. You know, for those of you who are like currently seeing one or two or three of them, it's always good to be able to bring out what lives inside you. But go back to the bird story, you know. The only way you can get rid of the stuff that bother you, really, for the most part, is they need to die inside you, so they have no power over you. And the only way they can die is for you to really, really understand them well. And for anyone to understand anything, you can't be an emotional junkie. You have to stand outside of you, look in, take notes, kind of like what you do in your math class or any class. Oliver.
I was gonna ask something else, but could you expand on
Do you sing?
could you expand on like what you mean by emotional junkie? Because you say that a lot, and like I feel like I have an idea of it, but I just want to know your point of view, what you mean when you say that.
I had a friend many years ago. She went to UC Davis, became a doctor, did an internship at Highland Hospital. When she was 11, ABCD happened to her, and her experience was one of trauma. You know, and the thing about trauma is that it always follows you. You know, it's like being a person of color and walking in a neighborhood where your skin color has been demonized for the past many, many thousands of years, right? And even though when people say hello to you, you kind of are a little doubtful that they're friendly. Every aisle you walk into and someone is behind you, you know that how they're looking and feeling about you. And so that's what trauma is. It just never leaves you alone. I mean, you can have moments of respite, moments of comfort, but for the most part, you know, it's always there. One of the ways that she was able to overcome her trauma when she came here from Afghanistan, she landed in Chicago. Every 2 weeks, she had a new boyfriend. And there was a reason for it. First, because she didn't know really what to do with the emotions caused by the trauma. Second, she didn't want to be around that particular set of emotions. And so she tried to hide behind all these young men who expressed their love for her. And she was very, very attractive. Like 1,000 times more attractive than Angelina Jolie and Rihanna combined. And so once she was saturated by those young men, she would kind of trash them and move on. And she became an addict in the sense that she always wanted to be around other people who expressed their adoration for her. And then she got tired of living that kind of a lifestyle. So she got married, assuming that because she was from a traditional environment, that once she got married, that she wouldn't be with other men. But that didn't last for too long. Eventually her marriage dissolved, and she found herself bedding, 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 men all at the same time. If that's a little too difficult to grasp, I'll give it to you this way. There was really no reason for you to ask your question. You should have just kept your hand down, kept your mouth shut, simply because you come to realize that about 90% of the questions that we ask are just junk, are just gossip. We don't really care for them. We don't really feel too deeply about them. We've never reflected too deeply about those questions. It's just a question that comes to mind, you know. It's like hit and run. And even if the answer was going to be given to you in a very in-depth sort of a way, you wouldn't really care that much. It wouldn't make a dent because the question is for the most part irrelevant to you, even though it sounds exciting. Third, you realize that what the Greeks used to do, one of the problems with modernity is that we no longer ask big questions. I mean, read the dialogues of Plato, read Aristotle, and you realize most of the Greeks of antiquity or ancient times, they asked really, really big questions. I mean, it's kind of like rap music 40 years ago. It was all about big questions. You know, when you go to, say, a therapy session, big questions, you know, and you ask those big questions because you try to distract yourself from all the things that you feel, but they just don't go away. You try to talk to your dad, no help. You talk to your mom, no help. You talk to your friends, no help. You YouTube, you audio, you do all sorts of things, no help. And at the end of the day, you say, maybe I should go seek therapy. And you do. And what you realize is that if, again, you happen to be around a very, very good therapist, they come to realize that every word that you use has a certain power to it, power that you may not really understand or know. So they push those words, those concepts back into your face. And at the end of the day, you realize that you're all alone and you need to wrestle with those questions. You need to wrestle with those concepts. And then you realize you spend about 5 to 15 hours of the day just by yourself, on your own, and you're completely happy with it. It's troublesome initially, but then you realize you really enjoy your own solitary relationship with yourself. So I suppose you continue to be an emotional junkie, but it's no longer relevant to other people. It's just you and you alone. You know, I don't want to be seen by other people and I don't want to be heard by other people. You know, the idea that I desire to make myself feel relevant by coming to class and talking about these ideas, or by coming to class and pretending that I'm intelligent or insightful or this or that. You really need to come to a stage in life where you say, you know, fuck all of that. I don't really give a shit. You know, I don't care about how I express myself, how I use profanities, what students think about me. So, yeah, you just got to be a different kind of an emotional junkie. You got to make yourself feel good in a very mature way. You know, I mean, just go sit somewhere and write an essay about, I don't know. Tyler. Nathan. Look, you know what a prostitute is, right? They sleep with you for like a few bucks. We sleep emotionally with people for significance and relevance and meaning, just to be seen. No one will ever see you, Oliver. Ever. Ever. So just be a monk. Yeah, sorry. Isabel, you're next.
Is it ever possible to not get drunk on power?
No. consider these tiny little priests. You know, when you're 18, 19, maybe you come from Europe, say Italy. And I don't know if any of you in this class have ever been to Rome, for example. Every street has like 50 churches, you know. You see all these like nuns and priests. Hello, good morning. So at the age of 2 or 3, you say, you know what, I think I want to be a priest. That's great. Maybe you've had a dream, maybe you've had a moment of inspiration, maybe, you know, Jesus Christ came to you in a dream. And he said, you know, Joe Schmo, you need to go out there and give my teachings to people. It's a great inspirational moment for you. You're 15, 16. Your body really hasn't blossomed. Your psychology hasn't really blossomed. At a certain point, the very organic components inside your body are going like a volcano, they're going to erupt. For the first time, you're going to understand the immense power of sex or the sex drive. For the first time, you'll perhaps, after giving your insights to some poor chap, you'll come to realize, man, you know, it feels good to give advice to people. Initially, of course, you do it in a very innocent, very naive, very, I suppose, pure way, innocent way, but as you experience this more and more and more, and as you realize you have power over other people, something happens to you. And I think you need to go through those things. You know, you need to have a lot of sex. You need to have a lot of money. You need to have a lot of life inside you until you come to the conclusion that despite being so rich with experiences and with the power to continue those experiences, for some strange reason, you're still insufficient. You just don't feel so good about yourself. One of the things that's most remarkable about humanity's heroes, Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, Moses, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Buddha, is that they had a very rich physical life. I mean, a very rich physical life. I mean, Moses is a prince. He lives in a palace. Jesus is a rich guy who has great parents. He has a job from a very young age. You know, marriage is promised to him. He's got friends. He doesn't suffer from loneliness. You know, and then he goes into, I don't know, God knows where for about 18 years, Persia, Egypt, India. You know, then you have the Buddha, who's also a prince, Mahavira, also a prince, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad. You know, all these people, you realize that they are rich with having sex inside them, money inside them, fame inside them, lots of powers, you know. At a certain point, though, they come to realize that, and it doesn't happen to all of us, you have to really have certain, I think, components inside you that will eventually rise to the surface and tame the power, you know. So yes, you need to get drunk, and then you need to puke. And then you need to kind of feel how painful puking is. And then while puking, that pain also forces you to kind of feel bad about how much money you spend drinking alcohol and being stupid. And then making jokes about stupid things and having your friends laugh about stupid things. And then realize that while you're puking, there's no one around you. That you wake up in your bed with puke everywhere and you've peed your bed and you feel, you know, alone and you punish yourself, but you repeat the same mistake a week later. And then you, same thing again, then you punish yourself. At a certain point, you just say, you know what, I don't want to use people anymore. I don't want to exploit people anymore. I don't want to hurt people anymore. But yeah, you need to go through those exploiting stages, and then you need to go through those puking stages, and then you need to go through repeating the exploitation and the puking. And then you get to be like, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, 90. You know, some people don't recover, like Trump or Elon Musk. or Jeff, Bezos, and some people do recover. Those who do recover kind of come to the conclusion that human beings do not live by bread alone. I mean, that's a very, very advanced stage to be. So, I mean, consider all the, celebrities with good looks, Brad Pitt, and the rest of them, that they can't hold on to a relationship, and there's a reason. And one of the ways that their power can be tamed is they get a little older, they get a little slower. They realize that, I mean, for men and women, it's very, very different. But hopefully, a 60-year-old Brad Pitt will probably, hopefully, come to a conclusion that, I may have good looks, I may have money, but the truth is, by the time I get to be 70, I'll probably be limping around. I'll probably suffer from dementia or Alzheimer's. Maybe I should start taming, that power, so I could form a relatively decent relationship with someone who will take care of me in my old age. So I think if you want to, going back to Elham's question, or any of you who have questions about therapy or teachers of sorts, I think you need to hang out with someone who was a professional sinner, made a lot of mistakes, got married 50 times, and destroyed their life, turned it upside down, trashed it completely. They went into depression, and somehow they rose from the ashes of their life because they really understood. And they understood because they took notes, they observed, they paid attention. And that's a good person to be around because they're very, very honest. And you need that, I don't know if any in this class have ever seen that movie. Yeah, good job. It's called Pretty Woman. You have this woman, Julia Roberts. In her youth, she was very attractive. No longer she is, of course. Why? That's just being honest. I mean, first of all, men are visual creatures. And women have an expiration date. In a youth culture such as this, where everybody's doing a facelift and Botox, I mean, you have to accept the fact that we don't like things that are old, be it milk or women or men, but men and women age differently, but that's another point. So, she's a prostitute, right? I mean, no one when they're in high school or junior high or first grade, when the teacher asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? Say, well, I want to be a whore. No one does that. So you realize that life sometimes, delivers these awful situations to you, and your parents suck and you suck and society sucks. And you realize that the only asset you have that God has given you is this beautiful body, beautiful face. So you sell it. Initially it's going to be very, very tough. It's like you come from this traditional background and your parents have always told you, no sex before marriage, but you fall in love. And love is a crazy thing, and you do all sorts of crazy things for love. And even though you're from the Middle East or, I don't know, wherever, an Amish community, you fall in love with a 90-year-old man, and you happen to be the Epstein file stuff. And, you're 18, 19, 20, and this man is 60 and you love him. And it's frightening, that you're selling your soul, you're selling your body to someone who doesn't even care for you. And then little by little, you become callous. I played tennis for about 10 years. about 8 hours a day on the court. And when you play tennis, you begin to have calcium. And even to this, I haven't played for over 20 years, but I can grab a needle and just stick it in my palm and I won't feel anything. And that's what happens to all of us after a while. But since you're talking about pretty women and the prostitution profession, which used to be a sacred craft, really. Anyways, the point is, she falls in love with Richard Gere. Watch the movie. Yes, Isabel. Less intense and overbearing? Wait, can you say your question again? Well, it depends on, you could be 60 and you could be a piece of shit. If you've seen the movie The Wrestler, for example, with Mickey Rourke, before he lost his home in Los Angeles recently, you could have been a lost cause as a kid, and you never really had insurance or money to seek therapy or seek help, or you never had guardians or friends around you. So those very volatile emotions just blossomed, and they kind of snowballed, and they lived inside you until you're like 60 or 70. And one of the ways that you do it is you become a WWF. I mean, you go into the wrestling or the UFC, like Conor McGeorge, if that's his name, or Mike Tyson, or George McConnor. Gregory, that's right. You're right. Whatever. So, your question is interesting in a couple of ways. So in New Guinea, for example, the culture, it does not allow you to express negative emotions. If you are a 70-year-old man and you express your emotions, negative, especially negative emotions, anger, in an unhealthy way before your audience, before your community, a 12-year-old will have the right to tell you, go stand in a corner. Okay? So you have certain cultures that don't really allow, individual emotions to come out. Okay? You have certain cultures that say, it's your life, it's your person, whatever. And it never really pushes you towards maturity. So there are certain cultures that are what we consider shame cultures. Shame culture, shame, the element of shame. If you've ever read Genesis, the creation story, what happens is Adam and Eve do A, B, C, D. They try to hide it from God. God eventually catches them. And then you have in the book that Adam and Eve are ashamed. Shame is an emotion that has an authority figure behind it. It's not embarrassment. Okay? Embarrassment is if I come to class and I'm unzipped. I just went to the bathroom, I got busy with A, B, C, D, and I forgot to zip up. You come to class and someone says, oh, professor, your pants are unzipped. I turn around and I zip myself up. It's a little embarrassing. Shame means your parents told you a few things and you said yes to them. And you saying yes to them, they trusted you. They had faith in you. And they come home and they realize that you did the exact opposite. This is not embarrassment. You're ashamed. And with that shame comes a good amount of anger on their part. If I am unzipped and I'm embarrassed, there is no repentance. There is no remorse. There is no anger. I kind of just giggle and say, I'm sorry. But it's not rooted in repentance. So shame is very, very different. So you have shame cultures. Africa is a shame culture. Japan, shame culture. Middle East, shame culture. America is not a shame culture. In fact, they did this study in Texas some years ago where gratitude, in other words, when do you become thankful to anyone? When you have needs. And those needs can't be satisfied by your own self. In other words, you need to buy diapers, but you don't have money to buy diapers. So you come to me and you say, Amir, can I borrow some money so I can get diapers? Okay. And then I give you $10 and you say, thank you. That's a gratitude expression on your part. So one of the things they got from this research done in Texas was that because people live a very solitary life and because people don't want to ask another for help, this element of gratitude doesn't really exist very much in the culture itself. So they don't really know how to be thankful for other people's presence. They're very self-sufficient, you know. And so what you only have, say, in many parts of Texas, is just embarrassment, not shame. Shame is communal. Embarrassment is individually based. Okay. So you have certain cultures where you're forced to just mature. I mean, look at Palestine. These kids, many of them will never go seek therapy. Unless, of course, the West goes in there and gives them concepts that are foreign to them. PTSD. We don't know what that is. We've never known what that is. In Afghanistan, incest is everywhere. But these young women eventually get married, they have a very healthy life and healthy relationships. And it's kind of like what Gore Duvall said some time ago, which is, if the culture doesn't give you language, will you have the emotions? The answer is probably not. You know, they did this go to the Middle East, the Sahara Desert, where you have sandstorm or snowstorm. And when you have storms like that, people sit, you know, in the middle of nowhere, and they sit for hours. And anthropologists have gone there and studied these people, not an ounce of frustration or irritation. Why? You know, hello, Abi. How are you? Good, thank you. And so you realize certain cultures are much better in making sure that people have emotions inside them that are expressed in a more mature way. It also depends on how seriously you take yourself, how reflective you are, how much you take notes on who and what you are, and all that. But is it true that, I mean, look, do you go to coffee shops? Next time you go to a coffee shop and you see a couple in their like 80s or 90s, give them the keys to your truck and tell them you guys can have the backseat of my truck for about 5 hours. Just go out there and knock yourself out. Truth is, at the age of 90, what the hell can you do? What are you going to do? Has life taken certain abilities from you? Yeah. I mean, having emotions takes a lot of energy. It really does. Expressing those emotions also takes a lot of energy. And, you know, one of the nice things about getting old is that at a certain point, you just don't have the energy to deal with certain things. You know, when you're young, yeah, you try to make friends with your father. And that requires a lot of energy, man. You think about him all the time. You feel about him all the time. You try to keep in touch with him all the time. You try to go back and figure out what the hell happened. You know, at a certain point, you just say, fuck that. I don't want to do this anymore, man. I want to live my own life. I've been doing this for the past 30 years. And it means that something in regards to that particular relationship and that particular tank inside you, the fuel is just finished. Just don't want to deal with it anymore. So as you age, you know, you just do a good amount of house cleaning, and sometimes it happens organically, and sometimes you do it willingly. So yeah. I mean, ask Donald Trump. He'll tell you. I mean, the way he used to like look at young women when he was 20 versus when he was I'm sorry, he's a wrong example. I don't know, that was just a bad joke. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you have a lot of emotions about you, don't go out with a 20-year-old. Because not only will you have to carry your own emotions, but his as well. Go out with someone who's like 60. No problem. Trust me, most of the things you think to be important now, in 5 years' time, they won't be. There's a shortcut. 60 may be too young these days. Go out with someone who's like 70, 85. And make sure you're in their will. 2 years later, I mean, if you are a very political-minded person, you go out with an 80-year-old man, give him lots of Viagra, stay in bed with him for about 5 hours. He'll probably have a stroke, die. A 6-hour relationship. And the wealth you now have. Beautiful. What is it?
You were here with it.
At what age does the age not really matter? You have a lot
For
of
who?
Advice, you have a lot of advice for like 18, 30, date younger, date older, or whatever. But like, at what age is it just like you're both over this age, date whoever the hell you want?
No. Let's take you, for example. This is like a hypothetical you. I'm not talking about like you personally. Getting a little older, the most important thing is security now. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't have passion, Get yourself a decent job. Of course, there are never guarantees in life, but get yourself a decent job. Make some good money. Buy yourself a nice little property. Make sure the interest rate is relatively low. Do a 15-year if you can. Pay the goddamn thing off as quickly as you possibly can. Pay extra if you have the extra cash on your mortgage. Get together with a relatively mature, a person. Spend a lot of time with them, because when you create stories with people, you inject a good amount of your own history inside them, and they do the same to you. And so the idea and relationships after a while, they kind of become a little toxic. That's just the nature of life. But what keeps the two of you together are the histories. And the stories that the both of you, they're like a super glue of the relationship. And so despite your desire to leave, the stories keep you intact. And it's nice to know that, despite the world falling apart, there's a tiny little space you have in life that you could be 75% sure there is safety and security in it, And then hopefully the both of you can grow old together, and she can take you to Kaiser, and you can take her to Kaiser or whatever. That's all. I mean, at a certain age, you really just need to be political. I mean, look at what Donald Trump did. Beautiful. I mean, that piece of shit, has probably did all the things that exist in the Epstein file. How else do you distract people? By bombing a helpless country. Every goddamn day in the news, How do you deal with Israel? That's what you do. You become political. You distract people. The Iraqis are never going to ask for justice for the next like million years because they have to build buildings. They're going to be occupied for the next few centuries just building buildings, man. They have no place to go. I mean, look at Gaza. They're not going to talk about Israel anymore. There is no structure standing. And that's how you distract and occupy people. You know, there is also good therapy. You know, I mean, in the sense that if your inside is like Gaza, every goddamn structure has been beaten down, the best thing that your therapist can do is, you know, let me tell you what has been destroyed inside you. Let me tell you how that's going to make you feel. And let me give you the tools to kind of build some buildings. And then, you know, then you can have some shelter. Fuck. What time is it? It's really good to see you. Have a nice day. Take care. See you soon.
Enjoy your weekend.
You more. Take care. Yeah, yeah.